July 18, 1953. The shadow in one's being. If you cannot see in yourself the tricks, maneuvers and deceptions that another uses, you may find yourself continually at a disadvantage, being too easily taken in. You can only see through another person by seeing through yourself. In saying this, to introduce the subject of this paper, I have to emphasize again two work ideas, namely, that our being attracts our life and that we do not know ourselves. This lack of self-knowledge is the rule in human existence and contributes volumes to man's useless suffering. For the human energy expended in useless suffering, when seen in vision, is incredible and terrible. However, though useless to humanity, the energy is used elsewhere in this economical and totally unsentimental universe, where nothing is wasted. Have you, by the way, begun to notice how much energy you actually waste in useless suffering? Perhaps you spend this morning being miserable, or sulking, or pitying yourself. Well, that is useless suffering. We have to sacrifice our suffering, we are often told so. But do we sacrifice it? Of course not. It does not occur to us that the work has to be applied to oneself, so we go on looking like dying ducks in thunderstorms instead of facing ourselves. But if you could touch your life objectively through self-knowledge, you would not and could not have any useless feelings of this kind. Now to return to the two things I mentioned, namely, that our being attracts our life and that we do not know ourselves, what prevents us from realizing that this is the case with ourselves? The answers are simple. Illusions prevent us. In the first case, nothing that happens to us is ever our fault in any serious sense. It is always somebody else's fault. That is how we see it mechanically. So we cannot see that the fault is truly in us. Therefore we do not wish to change our being, nor do we see any connection between it and what happens to us in life. In fact, I fancy we really do not grasp that we have a being of a particular shape. In the second case, of course, we know ourselves. What nonsense to say I do not know myself. Who should know myself better than myself? This again is sheer illusion. Now it is by such illusions that humanity is kept asleep, and the pain factory of life on this planet is kept going at full blast needlessly now, as G said, but owing to habit and our state of sleep. Yet there are ways out, and have always been, all through the ages. For it is the way out that esoteric teaching is about. This work is the way out for this modern period, the way out that is suitable to the period that is, if you do it but not otherwise. But few wish to find a way out, because they cannot or will not see that to get out, they have to start and work hard to change in themselves just what the work tells them to change. They will not face themselves. They will not observe themselves and find in themselves what the work points to. They have their own ideas of themselves. Moreover, the immensely powerful network of simple, cunning illusions about themselves prevents them from knowing themselves. To this must be added the nebulous illusion that things are bound to get better in time, the illusion of tomorrow, of mania, which G said we must contend with. One does not see that since one's being attracts one's life, things will not get better unless one's being changes. I ask you again, have you noticed in yourself what the work tells you to change? No. Well, somewhere will have to go. You may, however, be lucky enough to be given a revelation and memorably wake up, suddenly realizing the blinding truth of the work as regards yourself. I must mention here in passing that without hard work on oneself and a constant recourse to and refreshment of one's work memory, as you get older you get worse, and eventually crystallize out in some bad distorted shape. So we really have to do something about it all, as the work is ceaselessly saying, only we hear it faintly as in a deep sleep. Do you know, by the way, that you're asleep? Now you will see that the two things mentioned, namely, that our being attracts our life and that we think we know ourselves, hang together. It means, in short, you imagine you know your being. But you do not. If you did, your life would not be what it is and self-observation would not be necessary. You do not know your being, and so you do not know why you attract your kind of life. If you had sufficient self-knowledge, you might see either that you need your kind of life or that you could make it different. Now only the work can change your being. By knowing it, acknowledging it, and applying it to yourself, everything that happens to you can become intelligent. Consider identifying you free from it. Look how identified you are at this moment. Consider self-remembering. Do you ever practice it? Consider a lifelong grievance. Consider a daily making of accounts against others. Consider a lifelong preoccupation with negative and unpleasant emotions. Consider the giants, pride and vanity, and what a mess they make and how they spoil everything. Consider jealousy and hatred. Consider your appalling ignorance. Consider your fear of what people will think. Consider your violence. Consider your shifting line. You're going to say you find nothing to work upon, nothing in this work that applies to you. I have only mentioned a few things, but is your being free from such things? Apparently it often is, for people ask me what they have to work on. The answer may be that they simply cannot observe themselves, and they remain blind. They usually are very sensual thinkers who make reality a question of the senses. They have no internal attention. All the same, even if you're a very sensual thinker, even a little consciously directed internal attention to what is going on in you may surprise you and show you how little you know your being, and thus begin to change your idea of yourself. For is it not crystal clear that your idea of yourself must change before you can change? Eventually, you must sooner or later see through yourself this invented person you keep going at such cost this you that is not you. This is indeed self-knowledge. In proportion as you do, so you will see through the tricks and maneuvers and deceptions of others. Why? Because you will see them in yourself and yourself in them. Strangely enough, this frees you from their power, for it is standing too high in yourself and feeling superior that puts you so often under the power of others. Also, you are no longer surprised and indignant with others, which is a tedious and exhausting role to play. We seek to let the light into our inner darkness. The light heals us. It arranges tilings in the right order. This means we seek to be more conscious of ourselves. For example, I teach you to find in yourself what you judge so critically in others. You will get to know what is in your being in this way what you never realized. For many years before I read this work, I was Junk's pupil in Zurich. One of the useful things he taught was that we all cast a psychological shadow and that the beginning of the way to internal evolution